And by the way, if you would like the perfect introduction to what the play-in tournament, which, by the way, tips off later on tonight. You got the Hawks and you got the Miami Heat. You mentioned trade requests. You've got the Atlanta Hawks. There's some rumblings out there. I believe it was The Ringer who pointed out that Trae Young could be traded as well, too. So why wouldn't you trade Trae Young? I mean, he's your best player. You know, he put on a show a couple years ago at Madison Square Garden where he had people, spitting at him and doing a Trae's going bald chant. So why wouldn't a couple years later, after you get rid of the head coach, want to trade Trae Young during the offseason? But you've got all that happening. They're taking on the Miami Heat. And then you've got the Lakers, who couldn't catch a break the past couple of years, who now all of a sudden find themselves catching breaks because you've got one player for the Timberwolves breaking his hand, punching the wall on his way out of a game. And then you've got Rudy Gobert, who threw just an awful shot to the solar plexus at his teammate Kyle Anderson in the last game, final game of the season. So he's been suspended for this play-in game coming up later on tonight against the LA Lakers. And then you've got Adrian Wojnarowski with the tweet of all tweets, who sent this out yesterday. Quote, "The Timberwolves had to suspend Rudy Gobert for throwing a punch, but accepted that it was a shot to the chest with no intent to injure Kyle Anderson, and understand that Anderson called Gobert a B repeatedly on a night Gobert was playing hurt," sources tell ESPN. The B I was referring to rhymes with ditch. So you can use your own math to figure out what that is. But that ought to tee you up for the NBA play-in tournament, which tips off later on tonight. How fired up?
Well, clearly, but don't also forget they're not in the play-in. So but there were more fights. You got the Clippers fighting too. I don't know what was going on. I thought it was Easter. I thought it was a day in which it was supposed to be a holiday, spend time reflecting maybe on your religious beliefs or your family. Folks are just punching teammates all around the NBA that day.
You got to get after it a little bit.
Rudy Gobert's had a tough go ever since COVID. I mean, it seems to be all self-inflicted. But Rudy Gobert, you talk about someone who, they were like, oh, man, what a defensive stellar player. And he was an all-star because really they were doing it where, a center has to be picked.
Right.
And there were like 3 centers left.
Yeah.
So Rudy Gobert, I guess he's good. He blocks 5 shots a game. Now he get between the COVID situation where he's spitting all over microphones and telephones, remember that, and got Donovan Mitchell sick. Donovan Mitchell's never been a fan ever since. A lot of guys in the league are like, he's not that good. Then he goes to Minnesota, gets traded, not having the best season. They're not that great. He's punching teammates. It's been rough for the Frenchman.
Yeah, it's been a little dicey the past couple of years when it comes to Rudy Gobert. And then you just see the punching of the teammate and all this crap that's ensued. And then you've got Minnesota who's sitting, in this play-in tournament, and it looks like they're going to lose to the Lakers because now they're shorthanded. Literally, now they're shorthanded. Right. And so they're going to play, whatever the 9-10 matchup, they're going to play the winner of that as well, too. And it just feels like Minnesota was heading in a direction. Yeah. There was a lot of promise there. Cat was starting to come into his own. Anthony Edwards was starting to play well. And then all of this happens, and it's the final game of the regular season. Like, can't you just wait it out? Just wait out one more game before you start throwing hands? What are we doing here?
Do you give Minnesota any credit? Or is this well, how does that even work? So I got to do the math on that. If you're in the play-in and you end up being in the play-out, you played yourself out, you're lottery?
So, yeah, the 2 teams that are out of the play-in or the 4 teams that are out of the play-in tournament, so that would be the 9 and 10 after the whole thing is done, they end up in the lottery. So the way this works is that Minnesota, the winner of the Lakers-Timberwolves game is going to be the 7 seed. Yep. The loser has another opportunity to play. They'll be playing the winner of the Oklahoma City-New Orleans game that is coming up on Wednesday, and they would be the 8 seed. And the 2 sides from each conference would end up back in the lottery. So they've got 10 teams in the lottery, and then they throw these other 4 teams who don't qualify after the play-in round into the lottery as well, too. So my big question is, does Minnesota suspend Rudy Gobert a game if this was the 9-10 matchup and they absolutely had to win this game? That's what I would love to know.
Right, and that's what I'm on. But I'm also wondering, do they want a chance at a lottery pick? And so they're like, look, if we can lose this game, lose the next, we get a lottery pick, or as opposed to, maybe losing a few slots in the draft.
Because you would get Denver in the first round if you're the 8 seed. And no play-in team, and no play-in team has ever won.
I think I do want a little bit of that smoke. I don't think – well, let me say it this way. Nobody fears Denver. Nobody. In fact, you have teams who are like, I'd rather play Denver because Denver hasn't proven anything. I mean, they haven't shown us anything. And yes, Jokic is really good, but that's the whole knock right now is that JONAS or Jokic keeps winning, but he doesn't win in the playoffs. He doesn't have a seminal moment. He doesn't have something we can hang our hat on. He's just been good in the regular season. That's been the knock on him. So I don't think people fear it. Jamal Murray's been hurt. He's playing well, but he's not at apex right now. They have a good roster. They got some good players, but I just don't think teams fear them. Like this, not the number one seed this year isn't the Kevin Durant. And yes, I said Kevin Durant Warriors. You know, they're not. This is a number one seed Shaq and Kobe. This is a number one seed. You know, maybe the Mavs when they were in their prime. I don't think people fear the number one seed this year.
The scariest
in the Western Conference.
The scariest teams in the Western Conference are Phoenix and the Lakers.
Yep, I agree.
So Phoenix, because now you got Durant who's coming back. And by the way, people could say whatever they want about Kevin Durant and say, well, he went and chased down a winner and he's a front runner, blah, blah, blah. Dude, he won MVP 2 years that he was in the finals. If he's healthy, they probably beat Toronto in that finals. They completely fell apart physically, and he outplayed LeBron James both times he played him in the finals. Like that, those are just facts. So we can sit here and criticize Kevin Durant. He's shown up and played well in the playoffs. There's been some bad moments, but everybody's had bad moments in the playoffs. And then when it comes to the Lakers, just all of a sudden that midseason trade or they make the move at the deadline, they add in new pieces, and LeBron James is now healthy. Those two are the scariest teams in the Western Conference. It's why I don't think anybody looks at the West and says they're even on par with how good the East has been all year. And I just think, to me, you don't want any part of Phoenix, and the Lakers are a scary proposition if you get into the playoffs.
Well, the Lakers are scary too because they have what typically LeBron needs to win. And that is, I've got an ace with me. I got another guy with me. And I got my Robin, if you will, whether it's Dwayne Wade, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, 2020 in the bubble. And now Anthony Davis is playing like we expect him to play night in, night out. So Anthony Davis has given us what we thought he would be. Also, I think he's given LeBron what I hoped he would be in that, dude, you can be the guy most nights. Not I have to carry it. I have to light a fire under your butt. So Anthony Davis is giving them that. Then they got shooters, right? LeBron always needs some Kyle Korver, some James Jones, some Mike Millers around him. They got a bunch of that. Bunch of guys around him now who can knock down shots, real players. And then they got a sneaky guy who's an all-star-like guy in D'Angelo Russell who can say, hey, you're off a little tonight. I can pick up that slack. Yeah. So they're actually loaded, man. Obviously us living here in Los Angeles, seeing them play, they're pretty scary. And that's why you said it. No one wants to play them. If LeBron goes zero dark 30 mode, Anthony Davis, continues to play as he has. Who in the West do you look at and say, oh, they're an automatic? Like Phoenix, well, they've played very well, but they're gelling, right?
Yeah.
They're figuring things. They haven't been in a situation, crunch time. It's just been 6 or 7 games with Durant. They've won all of them, but it's different. You know that in any playoff sport. It's like, okay, it's getting real now. Benches are shrinking. Guys are playing more minutes. It's more physical. So we don't know exactly what Phoenix is. So it's going to be interesting. But I don't really fear anyone in the West. If I'm any team, I'm like, we got a shot.
Yeah. You just get in there, you roll the dice, and then you see what you got. And plus, the fact that it's not, the NCAA tournament, the fact that it's not, the NFL playoffs, that it's not a one and done, that you've got a series to work with, you can kind of go ahead and navigate through that, and hopefully we get some good basketball. I think everybody just wants the NBA playoffs to deliver at some point in some way, shape, or form. And so you've got all that fun stuff coming up, and then the Trae Young, as we mentioned, that whole disaster that has turned out in Atlanta, where. And that was one of those deals where if you looked at on draft day when the trade rights for Luka and Trae Young happened, it was one of those rare times. You'll see it in sports. Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs. When Buffalo and Minnesota made that deal, it's the one time where you look at it and go, so Minnesota traded away a top-tier wide receiver for a draft pick and then used that draft pick to draft Justin Jefferson, who might be the best wide receiver in football. It's worked out on both sides. You kind of had that vibe with Trae Young and Luka, and then now you've got Luka not making the playoffs, and we can get into the Mavs fiasco as well, too. And then you've got Trae Young, who, according to this report from The Ringer, is apparently on the trade block potentially this offseason. Like, what the hell happened in Atlanta?
Yeah, I listened. I think maybe you'd hope cooler heads would prevail down there. Maybe the expectations got a little high. You brought the great point. He was balling out in New York, and it was like the perfect stage to say,
awesome.
Welcome to the NBA. I'm here now. And it was awesome to see a guy, as someone who was once vertically challenged. I guess, I'm average now, but I was 4'11" in high school. Don't laugh, Jonas. I've seen you.
I was 5'3".
Oh, you get some fist pound right there.
That,
yeah, we did all right for ourselves.
Yeah.
We did all right.
See that?
So as someone of the party, formerly vertically challenged, it was great to see him become a villain, right? Not just because usually smaller guys aren't villains. It was cool to see, here's this guy. He's lighting New York up. He's a villain. He's embracing. He's having issues with the crowd.
Modern day Reggie Miller against Spike Lee.
Perfect example.
Yep.
Perfect example. And so it was good to see. It was fun to see. And I'm hoping that with the coaches, with McMillan, it wasn't working out, and maybe there was just some issues, and they can figure out a way to do it. Because Atlanta, the fan base there, they would embrace him. And you mentioned the trade. I've always thought about that. The trade worked out because Atlanta, the predominantly black in the city, you go back to the Michael Vick era in the NFL, the crowd they need something to come to the games about. A lot of folks in Atlanta are like my sister. We're from Michigan originally. She's been down there, 10, 12 years. There's a whole lot of that in Atlanta. And a lot of the fan base isn't necessarily tied to them. So you need somebody who's box office. Bring us out. We're not loyal like maybe in Philly, no matter what, we're going to be there. And, so having Trae Young, a star who let him get in the playoffs. You never know what can happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this could be crucial for them. He gets in. He has a good – maybe they get in there and have a good series at some point and reminds folks, I'm a 30-10 capable guy, and more importantly, I'm exciting. Can make everybody pump the brakes a little bit. Because you need him. Listen, there ain't a lot of Trae Youngs walking around. I know everybody thinks everybody can score and do all that in the league. Trae Young is exciting. He, like you said, he has villain tendencies, which is good because it makes folks want to come see him to either love him or hate him. Either way, you're buying a ticket. And let's not pump the brakes before I just get rid of him.
There's some box office to him. And then also, he's one of the guys where, let's just call it what it is. Steph Curry changed basketball in a way to where he made it okay. Because I've talked about this with LeVar Arrington and Brady Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing the show, and I was like, man, could you imagine growing up playing basketball? Because everybody played youth basketball growing up. And I was like, if I came up, dribbled the ball up the court, and pulled up from 26 feet and shot a three, my ass would get benched.
The whistle would have blown so fast. Get on this bench.
And my dad would have taken an extension cord to me out back. He would have been furious. What are you doing? That's selfish basketball. Steph Curry changed the way that thought process worked and that strategy in basketball worked, and that whole mentality completely changed it. Well, Trae Young was one of the guys who was the first to start playing like Steph Curry and successful. It worked. And so the idea that because you've had a down year and he was butting heads, and one of the articles that I was reading said that the problem with Trae Young is that you had players in the locker room who kind of sided with Nate McMillan over Trae Young. They thought Trae was the problem, not McMillan, and now he's gone. And Trae Young's there, and you just wonder, are players in that locker room looking around going, we don't want him, we want our old coach back? And I think that's where, so when ownership gives the front office a green light and says, well, you can look into whatever you need to look into, including possibly trading Trae Young. If I'm a Hawks fan, and I've been waiting around for somebody exciting like a Dominique Wilkins, and you had Josh Smith who was there, and you had a couple of years where you were kind of floating around the top, the Al Horford years where you were the 1 seed, but it was kind of like, but
no one believed him, like Denver.
The Cavs. Yeah, that's great comp. If I'm a Hawks fan, I'm looking around going, dude, we finally got a guy. He plays like Steph Curry. He's as close as we've seen, and it's successful. And now this, and we're in a play-in game. That's just not a good thought to be. A good thought to have if you're a Hawks fan.
It's going to be interesting to see. I'll say this real quick. I know we're up against it. Pump the brakes. Guys are coming into the league at 19 years old, right? 1 year, play 6 months in college, and I'm out of there. Pump the brakes. Still learning leadership. Still growing literally as a man. Think about when you were 23, 24, finding out who I am. What do I do? How do I take? How do I lead?
TGI Fridays.
Ooh, 23, 20. Yeah, I think I just started being a glorified street teamer in radio at that point. I think that's what I was doing. Hanging up banners and throwing out keychains. Their sister station. What was it? 95, Channel 955. Channel 955, the sister station there. But my point quickly was, pump your brakes, go back 30-something, 40 years. Magic Johnson. Remember, he got his coach ran out of town after a couple of years in, right? People were mad. L.A. was mad at Magic. Who's this kid getting his, settle down, figure it out, see what you got. You got something special, work it out. Because people forget, Magic Johnson, people were upset with him around here. He ran off the coach. He was running off this. He was disgruntled after a couple of seasons. And so I think that worked out for he and the Lakers, right?
Yeah.
Pump the brakes. You got something special. Figure it out. Find a way to wear.
And by the way, if you were 24 years old.
Did I just compare Trae Young to Magic Johnson?
Yeah, why not? Who cares? Piss off some Laker fans to start off your day. But listen, if I was 24 years old and I had enough pull and enough stroke to where I could have gotten some of my bosses fired at TGI Fridays, I would have gone in and complained to them and said, that's cute. Here's a bus tub and a squirt bottle. Go spray Station 8. That's what that would have looked like. So at least Trae Young's got some pull, you know?
That Jack Daniels chicken strips you guys have?
The real deal.
Real deal.
The real deal.
Crack.
Yeah.
For real.
It ain't no White Castle.